and welcome to this special Pride edition of Identity Architects. I'm your host, Ben Cicchetti, and for this episode, I had the opportunity to talk with Lucy McKillop, Joint CEO at Outvertising and Global Brand Director Carat at Dentsu International. Lucy and I dive into a ton of topics around pride, queer representation in media, queer representation in leadership, and much more. Before we jump into that conversation, just a reminder to hit that subscribe button so you know when the latest episodes of Identity Architects land. But without any further delay, here's my chat with Lucy. Today, I'm thrilled to be joined by Lucy McKillop, Joint CEO at Outvertising and Global Brand Director at Carat, Dentsu International. Lucy, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, thanks for having me.
So before we get started with the full questions, Lucy, can you give us a quick introduction to yourself and what you do at both Outvertising and Dentsu International?
Sure. So at Dentsu, I am brand director for Carat globally, a big old media agency. In fact, probably one of the biggest out there. And I am in charge of being the kind of brand custodian. That's what I like to call my day job. And then my gay job is being the joint CEO for Outvertising, which is the advocacy group for queer people working in the marketing and advertising industries in the UK. And we exist to make the industry completely LGBTQIA+ inclusive.
I love that. So, as usual, we'll kick things off with a series of quick fire questions just to get to know you a little bit better. So, for yourself, what is your earliest memory of advertising?
God, I was thinking about this, and I honestly, I don't know what my earliest memory of advertising is. I think it's probably something brilliant and timeless, like the Mars, or was it? No, what was it? The red car and the blue car had a race. I can't remember if it was for it was for Milky Way, right?
Yeah, I love that. I think so. Milky Way. It was one of those chocolate bars.
But I think that was probably released around the same time as the kind of most commonly known first ever queer advert was released in the US, which was for IKEA. And I think that was about 94. I mean, you can check. You can check the years. But yeah, basically it's a brilliantly kind of like downplayed gay couple walking around talking about the type of furniture they like. And it's probably some of the most kind of authentic and understated queer advertising you'll see. And I absolutely love it. So it's one to definitely look up if you want to.
Yeah, I love that. I'm going to have to look that up. And I guess on a similar theme, kind of what's your earliest memory of LGBTQ plus representation in media, as in TV, movie, music, advertising?
Well, I mean, it's different for different channels, right? So I think my musical taste as a young child was pretty queer. A major obsession with Culture Club and
Nice.
George Michael and Wham. But I think if we're talking about TV, I remember when Queer as Folk came out and being not allowed to watch it, desperately wanting to watch it. And then, thinking about kind of when it became a little bit more ubiquitous, I think things like the L Word, and obviously that's a bit later. But yeah, I think probably the earliest memory would be dancing around my lounge to Boy George in Culture Club, but not really knowing, obviously, that he was queer. But then obviously with hindsight, you kind of realise that how could people not know? I mean, it's mad.
Yeah. I mean, it's incredible. And obviously, so much we've come so far since then, right? As you kind of talk about with so many shows, movies, kind of with some great kind of representation today. But back in the day, it was definitely the exception, not the rule. I was trying to remember what I think my earliest memory of
Yeah,
LGBTQ plus
tell me.
representation. I think it was the Julia Roberts film, My Best Friend's Wedding.
Oh,
Like, her
wow.
editor is gay in that, and I
Yeah.
remember going to watch it. I think I watched it with my mum and my sister, and I think that's my first memory of seeing a gay person depicted on TV or movies.
How did that
Um,
feel?
I think at the time I didn't think much of it. I think he had a great representation. I think I would have been very young. I would have been kind of 10 or 11 at the
Right.
time. So I was still incredibly young, but it didn't seem unusual. It was a very positive representation. It was a very positive character. So I think
Yeah.
that's really great for that time, especially, with mid
Yeah.
90s where, there wasn't great depiction. So, but yeah, I was thinking about it over the weekend. I'm pretty sure that would have been my first kind of memory of
I
kind of
think
gay
it's really
representation.
interesting, right? Because we talk a lot about you can't be what you can't see in advertising, and we talk a lot about making sure that there is this kind of role modeling going on from the kind of senior people working in advertising, so that the younger generations know that they can proudly be their whole selves at work. But when you think about this idea of seeing people um, in kind of music, film, TV. You asked what my earliest memory is, but in terms of my identity, in terms of being a bi woman or being, um, open to kind of same sex relationships, um, my kind of feeling of being of seeing someone in TV, film, music really came from seeing it's more aesthetic than actual identity, but like seeing Missy Elliott, who was like this kind of big kind of slightly kind of mask woman, um owning who she is and not really giving two hoots. I'm going to try not to swear. One of the hardest things that I will achieve today, about what people think about her. And Annie Lennox wearing this kind of amazing bleach blonde, like cropped hair. And yes, these could be seen as being kind of stereotypes of what you might expect a kind of bi or lesbian woman to look like. But this idea that you didn't have to fit that norm and you could express yourself as you wanted to was really, really exciting to me. And it wasn't necessarily about their sexuality or how they identified. It was more about this idea of being who you are and being proud of it. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's kind of that would be my kind of alternative response to that question.
Yeah, I love that. And there's so much representation now, right? For, I have such kind of hope for kind of, I'm going to make myself sound old when I say the youth of today, but the youth of today with things like Heartstopper and other things that
I
kind of they can
know.
see amazing representation. They can see their love being kind of represented on TV. I think it's just incredible. So kind of, I have such hope for where we're going at the moment. So moving on to a bit more about yourself, what was your first job in either advertising or marketing?
So my first job in advertising or marketing was for an out of home media owner called JC Co, and I was a sales assistant. And so it was my job to do all of the kind of competitive analysis, doing lots of admin work, making sort of beginning to kind of make relationships with the people who were buying the space in the kind of posters around the UK. And yeah, I was terrible at it. I was absolutely abysmal. Unbeknownst to me, I had ADHD. I have ADHD, and I've only been diagnosed in the last couple of years. And so my ability to, uh, have a kind of reliable flow of support for the team was, practically zero.
Mm.
Um, and also it didn't really give room for much creativity, in my view, which is something that I'm really quite good at. So it was a great lesson in finding a job through necessity, and then using that as a jumping off point to the route that more suited my skill set and disposition.
Amazing. And so I guess thinking about that kind of first job and you just starting out, what would you tell yourself now if you could kind of tell your younger self something as they were starting in their career?
I would tell myself to be more confident and apply for roles in more creative um, arenas. So,
Mm.
and not to get impatient and not to buckle. Like keep applying for jobs at creative agencies, keep applying for jobs at production houses, keep applying for jobs in the music industry, keep applying for jobs in telly, because I did one or two applications, got nowhere, thought that I was never destined to work there, and then sort of took the easy route and got a kind of low grade kind of entry level sales role. Now, for people who are great at sales, that's brilliant. But I'm not that person. So I think that if I could go back, if I could tell myself something, that I would definitely say stick at applying and getting into a kind of an arena that allows you to be creative from the get-go.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And then I guess thinking about today and where you are today, what do you love about what you do at both Outvertising and Dentsu?
So I'll start with my day job. So I love writing. I love the strategic side of what I do. So I love thinking about how to reach the people I need to reach with the content and the work and the projects that I'm in charge of.
Mhm.
So we all know what advertising marketing is all about, right? It's about reaching your audience in a compelling and attention kind of grabbing way, or at least that's my definition. That's what I
100%.
said. So when you're working as a B2B marketer, it's maybe not as sexy as if you're working for like a big kind of brand or whatever, but it tests me. And I like the fact that it's not easy. And I like the fact that there are more layers that you have to get through. There's a deeper understanding of people that you need. And I also love that, with all of that in mind, the truths of brand defense and brand kind of growth remain the same. Make sure, I'm constantly talking about how we need to keep iterating what our brand stands for. How we do that, it needs to trickle down through everything that touches every kind of brand touch point possible. So yeah, there are lots of things that I love about my day job. I also love my team. It's like
Amazing.
we're a kind of truly post-pandemic team, I guess. Like, some of us are in Texas, some of us are in New York, some of us are in London, and we call ourselves the Wolf Pack. We're all like a weird kind of group of lone wolves brought together, and we manage to be this kind of like tight knit team, in spite of being kind of spread around the world, which I love. And then in terms of Outvertising, I think it's the longest standing job I've had. But okay, maybe I'm a year off. Maybe I'm a year off it being the longest standing job I've had. But essentially, working with Outvertising has given me confidence in ways that I never knew was possible. You know, in the time that I've been working with Outvertising, starting off as someone who sort of joined as a bit of an observer and tagged along to meetings, not really knowing what the heck was going on, to, you know, running the comms for the organization, and then eventually moving into the kind of joint CEO role, it has allowed me to kind of flex and learn things that I didn't, you know, didn't and don't really get view of in my day job. So, you know, things like the fiduciary and legal side of things like the finance side of things. I mean, sure, I run a budget, but, you know, understanding the ebbs and flows of a kind of P&L and the kind of tax side of things, like quite boring processy things, that I find really fascinating. And really it has made me understand that I'm a pretty good general manager, and is kind of helping me pave my path through my career. So I'm 40 now, and really you think about when you're in your sort of 20s, 30s, it's all about getting really good at your craft. But when you get to my, I think when you get to my age, once you kind of honed a craft and you know what you're doing, there's this expectation that you kind of understand what the next 15 years of your career is going to be like, 15, 20 years of your career is going to be like. And a lot of the time, people are promoted into jobs that they're actually not very good at. Like when you get good at one thing, they promote you and you're like, oh, right, I have to do all of this stuff that I didn't do before and now I don't know what to do. So with Outvertising, I have been allowed to grow. So that's the personal side of Outvertising. And then, you know, it boils down to the work that Outvertising does is like insanely important. It's the most important thing that I do on a daily basis. Mm-hmm. It's literally about defending people's lives and people's livelihoods and people's right to be themselves. And, you know, I think we are all aware of the increased levels of hatred in legacy media, particularly in the US and the UK at the moment. You know, and so the work that we're doing at Outvertising, it's more important than it has ever been in the time that I've been working at Outvertising. So just 3 years before 2018, when I joined Outvertising, the UK was listed as number 1 in the ILGA Europe kind of league tables. That's the International Lesbian, Gay, Bisexual, Trans and Intersex Association. Mm-hmm. And they essentially rank the European countries in terms of their kind of inclusion of the queer community. And so, yeah, 3 years before I joined Outvertising, we were number 1. The UK felt like a kind of easy place to be as a queer person. Today, we have dropped to 17th position, and the ILGA puts this down, and I'm quoting here, puts this down to widespread hate speech from politicians, religious leaders, right-wing organisations, and media pundits. You know, this is a crisis, and it's a kind of seemingly organised campaign of hate. And so what we are doing at Outvertising, making sure that the queer community remains visible in one of the most omnipresent kind of media and omnipresent kind of forms of content that people consume on a daily basis, is more important than it's ever been.
100%. It's scary, right? How far, you know, I think back to kind of 5-6 years ago, and it felt like as a community and as a country, we'd come so far in our representation. And it really feels like we're dangerously taking steps backwards. because of kind of, as you said, I think a lot of it comes down to the way that social media has been used to just kind of spread kind of negative opinions about the community, and then that's being picked up by media that
Right. And now editorial is filled with, hate and opinion around people's right to exist. Like that is the thing that genuinely blows my mind.
mm,
Like, we are having a debate about people's right to be who they are. I just find it completely bonkers.
yeah,
And when I have had conversations with friends who are like, "Oh, I don't understand this non-binary thing," or like, why is there so much noise going on about this?" And I'm like, if you don't understand it, just put your hands up in the air and say, "Live and let live." People just want to live peacefully.
yeah,
Like, people just want to crack on with their day, be able to go for a coffee, be able to hold hands with the person that they love in the street, be able to wear what they want, be able to look how they want to look, have sex with who they want to have sex with. Like, we are out here just trying to be ourselves. Why does that have to take up something like 30 articles a day in the front quarter of this year of kind of like barrage of negative editorial content about people's gender or people? It's wild. And I think
yeah.
that maybe answers one of your questions that's coming up about what keeps me awake at night. That is what keeps me awake at night.
Yeah, I can imagine. And I guess, yeah, that does it fits very well into kind of the next question, which was, what keeps you awake at night? But I guess the flip side of that is, and I can feel the passion obviously you have
Yeah.
for what you're talking about. What gets you motivated in the morning?
What gets me motivated in the morning? Knowing I can make a difference makes me motivated in the morning. When it feels like the problem is too big, I feel quite disillusioned. So when I feel like I am able to make tangible difference to the problem at hand, that is when I am leaping out of bed. I mean, let's be real, I never leap out of bed. But my cat is too cute and snuggles too much in the morning for me to leap out of bed. But I definitely feel that kind of steely grit and determination, and like I'm ready to kind of tackle things when I know that I can make a
I love that. That's inspiring. That's awesome.
difference.
So, last of our kind of quick fire questions. If there was a song that was the soundtrack to your life, what would it be?
I think this is a really mean question. And I think you should change it to if there were 3 songs, because one
Okay.
song cannot be a soundtrack.
Okay,
One.
let's go with 3.
Great. I'm so glad that I managed to challenge the brief. Um, so first one would be "I'm Thinking of You," Sister Sledge.
Nice.
Um, First of all, because it's one of the best disco tracks ever written. And also because it's just one of the most lovely sentiments you can possibly have, is
Mm.
thinking of you. And really, that is the crux of the allyship that we want people to show, and that we are advertising show for the community, by the community, right? So that's my number one.
Yeah.
Number two would be, so hard, "Rocket Man" by Elton John, because
Amazing.
it's literally one of the best songs ever. I don't even need to explain it.
100%
And then
agreed.
finally, I'm going to go for Britney Spears' "Toxic," because it never fails to make people to get up and dance. Never fails to make people get up and dance when it goes on. And
Yeah.
also, my son plays the guitar, and he can play that on the guitar, and we do a lovely duet to it.
I love that. I love that. That's awesome. Well, all 3 of those will get added to our Spotify playlist of all the songs that people have chosen. So
Oh,
people can
amazing.
go and listen and enjoy those. That'd be awesome. Brilliant. Well, moving on to kind of the more media questions.
Yeah,
So I first became aware of advertising about 18 months ago.
okay,
I think I was purposely looking for a community to be part of in the kind of the advertising industry that I'm in. Joined the Slack community and kind of been an admirer of everything that advertising is doing. But for those who may not be as familiar, and I know we've talked about advertising a little bit previously, but could you tell us a bit more about advertising and its areas of focus?
for sure. So I think I've said before what our kind of reason for existing is. We exist to make the UK advertising and marketing industry completely LGBTQIA plus inclusive. And the way that we do that is we kind of split our organization into three squads. So the first squad is people, the second squad is output, and the third squad is kind of operations, or I like to call it getting your house in order. And so for the people side of things, we work with organizations on allyship training, role model training. We've got the mentoring scheme that we've run every year for the last 4 or 5 years. And we also work with ERGs, and put on socials, and we also put on Outvertising Live, which is a big kind of pinnacle moment in our calendar, where we get as many queer people and allies together in a room, and we essentially kind of like talk about all of the kind of current topics that are kind of burning on our lips, and also think about how we can kind of move the industry forward for queer inclusion. In terms of output, so this is very much focused on how we can make ads more inclusive. So literally focusing on the content that our industry produces. And that's actually what the organization was originally set up to focus on. We, pulled together lots of research in the advertising guide. I think there are 2.5 versions of it, and you can download them on our website, which talks about the importance of inclusion, how to do it well. Now, those guides are still quoted by people today, even though the last one was released in 2018, 2019. So they are pretty out of date. So one of the things that we're really excited that we're going to be releasing at Outvertising Live later this year is a new piece of research that we're working on with YouGov called the Advertising Consumer Report. And it's exactly that. It's looking at queer consumer behaviour. So our brilliant head of intelligence called Kendra Rogers, she is heading up that project. And honestly, she and I talk about how our presentation styles are really different. Like, she's so brilliant at kind of sort of deep diving into facts, and so when that piece of research is released, she's your woman. You want to get her into your organization to talk about the kind of really interesting insights that are being kind of unearthed in that data. The one that I can remember is lesbians love Iron Brew.
Wow.
But that's like, that is literally that is a kind of like cherry on the cake of the kind of huge mountain of information that we have. But yeah, like, lesbians in the UK index way higher than the national representation against liking Iron Brew. There you go.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it is amazing. And gay men, I think, love Apple products.
Well, I'm on a MacBook looking at my iPad, so
Yeah,
clearly I'm living the
and Diet
stereotype.
Coke. Is that? Do you think does that?
Diet Coke, did you say?
Yeah, Diet Coke.
I also drink Diet Coke,
Yeah,
so I could not be any more stereotypical, clearly.
listen. Yeah, okay. So maybe I am coming a close second to Kendra's ability to remember facts. You
There
got
you go.
3 really good ones there.
That's awesome. That's really cool. I'm looking forward to seeing the final report when it comes
Yeah,
out.
it will be really interesting actually, and the idea and the kind of desire is to work with these brands and say, look, you've got this insight um, about your consumers. You have more queer consumers against national representation. So talk to them and talk to
Mm.
us, and let's see how we can kind of make your content kind of speak to them a bit better. Oh yes, sorry, I'm going around the houses here, and you were asking me about how we kind of organise ourselves, and so that's about the that's about the output, and then the final piece is our operation side of things. So as we've grown, we have more of a need for things like really sexy stuff like platforms and CRM and things like that. So actually that's my primary focus, is thinking about how we make sure our organization is kind of set up for success, and the kind of process of onboarding people and welcoming new volunteers into the fold goes smoothly, and everyone is kind of is feeling good and happy about how it's all organized. So yeah, I mean, there's obviously a lot more, like things like funding and commercial piece and the legal side of things, but I'm not going to touch on that. Quite enough kind of like long boring words for now.
That's awesome. No, that's awesome. That's I think what you're doing there and what advertising doing is amazing. And I'm kind of excited to see more to come.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's the start of Pride Month. We're in June. So, from your perspective, why in 2023, we've talked a lot about kind of we came so far, but it feels like we're maybe taking steps back.
Mm,
Why in 2023 do you feel Pride is still so important?
yeah.
And what does it mean to you?
Oh man, it's pride is important, and it's not just important, it's necessary. It's like an imperative, because without pride, the queer community don't necessarily have the opportunity to protest, to celebrate, to um, have a kind of dedicated time and or period to feel like there's a culmination of our kind of energy and feeling, right? But I think one of the things that we talk about a lot at Outvertising, and is something that I'm, coaching other people through, is that in that month, organizations can sometimes, in a very well meaning way, expect their queer employees to perform. Oh, it's your month, so you can just come and talk to us about your lived experience. Um, or like, oh, there's loads of trans hate going on in the media, so we want a trans person to come and talk to us this Pride Month. And so, on the one side, yes, it's really important that these opportunities are generated for the community. But I think we've hit a point now where Pride Month celebrations, and I put celebrations in quote marks, need to be backed up with tangible action. So it's important because it shines a light on the community. It's important because it's really important that, and actually I'm talking beyond Pride Month, Black History Month, Women's History Month, International Women's Day, International Trans Awareness Day. There are all of these kind of calendar moments give minority groups the opportunity to say, I am here, I am seen. um but I think there is a huge amount of fatigue attached to that, and performance, expected performance. So my feeling is that yes, it's important, but also just tread lightly, tread lightly and tread carefully with your queer colleagues, because at the moment the world is a pretty traumatic place, for queer people. You know, people are thinking about moving away from the UK because it's so hateful. So that's how I feel. I feel like it's important, and we've got to do it, but it has to be done in a way it allows people to not engage as well. Because if it's too much, it's too much, and people need to step back. I mean, I was having a conversation with someone recently where they were feeling really angry about, you know, well-meaning kind of allyship activities, um, where someone had suggested that everyone wear bright colours to the office for the month. And it's like, it comes from a place of meaning well, but you think, okay, but like, what about healthcare? Like, what about gender neutral toilets? What about mental health kind of support or therapy for everyone? Because the queer community, talk about over-indexing against Iron Brew. Let's look at the stats around how the queer community over-indexes in the realm of mental health. So I feel like I'm meandering off topic a little bit, something I do. But it's important to have pride. And yes, it's many things to many people. Celebrate pride, protest pride, be serious about pride. But if you are a kind of commercial entity and you are looking to do something around pride, make sure that you've got policy and care to back up your kind of rainbow logo.
Yeah, 100%. And I think it's a good point, right? Because, as we kind of hit June, we expect to kind of see just a wave of rainbow logos across our social media, our advertising, and in store. And
What
already, gone.
can I just ask you something there? I think, what do you when you see rainbow logos, how does it make you feel? This is like a genuine point of interest for me.
Yeah, we're having this conversation. So I'm the chair of our LGBTQ plus network here at InfoSum, and we had this conversation at a meeting we had recently. And I think when I say walk through a town and I see kind of rainbow flags up, there's definitely a feeling of being seen.
Yeah.
And to a degree, I think there's a feeling of safety. It feels safer
Yes. Yeah.
somehow
Yeah.
because you see that. But as I've got educated myself more and more, I think there's also a slight, I can feel quite cynical about it. And, I think as we've already seen this year, some organizations are doing Pride well. Like, I think Absolute, I wrote a piece on LinkedIn about this. I think Absolute do a fantastic job around Pride because they
Yeah.
back it up with various
I
other
mean,
activities.
they were one of the first brands to advertise in queer magazines like
Yeah.
40 years ago. So
Yeah.
they have the history, so that makes sense.
Yeah. 100%. But then there's others that do it badly, right? And unfortunately, a lot of this is coming from across the pond right now. But there's organizations that have attempted to do activities around pride. And I think the danger when you do that, and I always talk about authenticity, if you're not authentic in your support for the LGBTQ plus community, when it comes to pride, your actions won't be authentic. And therefore you will pull your support very quickly at the kind of the first sign of any kind of backlash. And then you're kind of, it's a double-edged sword, right? Because then not only have you angered kind of the extreme far right that have these kind of they're very vocal minority, but
Mm,
you've also then upset and disappointed the LGBTQ plus community. So you've kind of shot yourself in the foot twice in those situations.
exactly.
So from your perspective and the work that you do at Outvertising and that others do at Outvertising, kind of what advice do you give to organizations if they are wanting to do something around pride?
So it's funny you should ask that, because we are currently preparing a statement that we are going to be releasing in the coming days, which essentially implores brands to stand their ground this Pride Month. I think what you said about things coming from across the pond, I think there are two examples of Pride activities that we can take. Now, the first one is North Face. So they've released something. I think they've got a Pride line of products, and they've released some content with some drag queens, or a drag queen. I have to say I've only glanced at the video, but they have unsurprisingly received backlash for this content, and they're doubling down. They are, they're ramping up their activity. They are increasing the amount of product that they're putting on display, and that is in stark contrast to what Target have done, right? Which is they've received backlash for products that are being sold, and so they've discontinued the lines. And so you think, well, in this scenario, we need everyone to be more North Face.
Yeah.
So the statement is going to cover, it's going to cover that. It's going to say, in this current climate, expect to receive backlash if you are displaying a rainbow logo. Make sure that you have tangible action to back that up. If you receive any backlash, stand your ground, double down, keep doing it, because we have the stats that show that ultimately it doesn't matter how many people hate your brand so long as enough people love your brand. And that is a quote from someone at Nike.
Wow.
After their kind of all of the stuff that's gone on with them, and the kind of hate that they've received since Black Lives Matter, etc. They basically have had this kind of experience of, yeah, you do get a few people dropping away, but it's not enough to combat the people who start seeing you in a positive light and join up,
So one of the things I often think about when you see these decisions being made about companies kind of backtracking on their commitment, and as I mentioned, I kind of talk about kind of authenticity, but I also wonder about what it says about the representation at a leadership level, right? Because if you have LGBTQ plus and other minorities represented in your leadership teams, I suspect you're more likely to stand by some of the decisions, some of the marketing decisions and brand decisions that you might make, especially around things like pride. But we still see such an underrepresentation of LGBTQ plus people in leadership positions at businesses, especially kind of the C-suite and board levels. So from your perspective, how important is it that we improve the representation of LGBTQ plus people in those positions?
I mean, representation at a C-suite level is like gold standard in role modeling. And I wish that I saw more queer people in really kind of senior positions around the industry, and also not just around the industry, but in kind of senior positions in the UK generally. And I mean, it feels mad to me that there are still moments of like, oh, this politician has come out as gay, and you're like, so like what? I just think like it feels mad that today like it's still a thing. So it would be great if we could get to a point where, yes, people can come out, because coming out is wonderful and kind of life affirming and identity euphoric and all of those things. but also to the point that like newspapers are like, oh, I don't really feel like this is a headline. And the second piece to that is, I think there's a piece of research. I can't remember who exactly it's by, but I think it's by I'm not sure. But basically, it says that queer women in leadership positions are 86% less likely to come out at work than their male counterparts. And so I guess for me, the big question is not around queer representation in general, because I think that maybe this is my perception, but I think it's probably easier for gay men to come out at work. Well, it is. I mean, that's the stat. So, what is it about women not wanting to come out at work? Why is there a kind of barrier? And what can we do to make it easier for there to be more queer female role models in the industry and in the country? Yeah, that's how I feel about it at C-suite level. Like, it's problematic. We need to sort it out. But when you dig into it, the real problem is around queer women.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. I wasn't aware of that stat. That's fascinating.
Yeah.
And I think it's important that we kind of, every company is doing everything they can to kind of provide those role models, as you talk about. It's that feeling of, and you mentioned it earlier,
Yeah.
if you can't see someone else being successful as their true authentic self that looks like you, sounds like you, acts like you, then it's really hard to see yourself in that future role.
Yeah.
And then it leads to people either not shooting for it, so they're not applying for those more senior positions, or they're hiding their true self at
Right.
work and living an inauthentic lifestyle at the workplace, where we spend so much of our time, either remotely or in person. We spend so much of our time in our workplace. If you can't be your true authentic self, the mental health drain that just comes from living that kind of inauthentic lie is exhausting.
Totally. I think that's it. I think there is like a weight of burden around, on the one hand, being your true self at work and coming out comes with the threat of, discrimination or being treated differently, even if
Yeah.
that doesn't necessarily totally kind of isn't totally kind of viewable as discrimination. Or on the flip side, you've got this kind of conundrum of not coming out and hiding your true self, and the kind of oppression and sadness that that brings, right?
Yeah.
So there has to be a world in which where there's a sweet spot where you can come out and be sure that you can be your true self, and it's like wonderful and affirming, and you can be that role model, and you can be that kind of like be what you can see kind of person, right?
100%.
But it feels like that sweet spot is like getting smaller
Yeah.
and getting harder to find. And so, we have to take the approach of safety first, I think, at the moment.
Yeah. I agree. So I guess as we wrap things up, kind of final couple of questions. Is there anything we haven't covered that you feel we should, or anything you just kind of want to add?
Is there anything we haven't covered? Well, what I would like to say is Outvertising is an entirely volunteer-run organisation. A ragtag crew of wonderfully bonkers individuals who I adore. And, we are absolutely greater than the sum of our parts. It is not mine, it's not anyone's. It is this wonderful kind of organism that moves and shifts depending on what's needed and what's demanded of us. And I'm never not in complete awe of the people that I get to work with at Outvertising every day. So, I think the thing that I haven't said is thank you to those wonderful people. And if anyone listening to this wants to get involved, we have a volunteer scheme called the Advocates Scheme. And then we also have a board that does the kind of operation stuff on day to day. So, and we have tenures, so it's a constantly moving thing. So there are always board positions coming up. But yeah, we are always looking for kind of invigorated and passionate people to come and join and join the cause.
I love that. And obviously people can head over to outvertising.org to learn more about the organization, join your Slack community. I love the Slack community. It's brilliant.
The Slack community is completely wonderful and is the brainchild of our community and culture kind of work stream. And yeah, it's the first time we've had this ability to bring everyone who's queer working in working in the industry together in one sort of like quite low level closed community. So it's brilliant. Yes, yeah. You're absolutely right. Everyone should join it.
100%. Awesome. Cool. So final question. Obviously this podcast is all about pioneers in our industry. Yeah. So when you look at people you admire in the industry and people around you, who would you nominate for us to interview in an upcoming episode?
Ooh, that's a great shout. Okay. So someone that is on my brain at the moment, because I want to speak to them, is a woman called Shaka Savani, who is the creator or the ECD for Leo Burnett. And she's an out queer woman in leadership. So she is one of the few people that I look to for kind of, well, mainly just in the press, to be honest, because we don't actually know each other, but look to for kind of like behavioural guidance and, aspire to be like.
I love that. That's awesome. I absolutely love that. Well, Lucy, thank you so much for joining us for the podcast. It's been amazing to talk to you. It's been amazing to learn more about you, about advertising, and just to kind of discuss kind of the issues at hand right now. So thank you for joining us.
Thanks so much for having me. And yeah, good luck with everything.
Thanks again to Lucy for joining us on Identity Architects. It was amazing and inspiring to talk with Lucy and learn more about the incredible work the team at Outvertising are doing. When it comes to positive advocacy for LGBTQ+ people, visibility is always so important. Visibility in media, visibility in advertising, and visibility in companies. All that leaves me to do is remind you to hit that subscribe button so you know when the next episode of Identity Architects lands. But until then, thanks for listening.